Hi, welcome everybody to another video. Shoot, I want to say welcome all the new subscribers to the channel. Our channel's grown by about 20 times over the past couple weeks. Just a lot of new subscribers. I think last I checked we were at 20,000 subscribers. But by the time I get out of the mountains and we've got service again, we'll probably be at 22,000 subscribers, which is amazing. Just absolutely blows my mind. Anyway, today we're going to talk about feather sticks and how to extend the burn time of a feather stick. If you don't want to spend 20 minutes making piles of curls, this is how we do that here in the Rocky Mountains, where we've got a lot of Douglas firs which don't produce a whole lot of fatwood. There's sap everywhere in these things, but when they fall on the ground they tend to turn into this moisture-filled punkwood, and when it finally does dry out, that'll take a spark or an ember just fine. But let me show you something that a lot of pine trees do that can extend the burn time of one of these and turn it essentially into what fatwood ends up being. I do carry a chunk of fatwood with me into the woods. It's water resistant, it takes a spark really well, but if you haven't got a lot of this stuff, this is how you get around that, and it's everywhere, easy. So let me make some curls and we'll get right to it. All right, for this demonstration, where are we? What are we looking at here? I've cut a notch in the branch here, the log that I'm sitting on. This is a knot right there. That is where your pine sap is gonna be, your fatwood. I'm just gonna set this over here. That's fatwood, so if you wanted to cut that out of there, go for it. It takes a lot of work and it's just sometimes a pain, and what I'm going to show you is far easier. But first you need to create your feather stick, and I'll show you how I like to do that. Alright, so when I make feather sticks, I'll get a stick that's about from my wrist to my armpit. Why? Because I like to lean into it. You guys can see this. I just put it into the shoulder like I'm holding a rifle, and that's one end, that's the other. Really simple way to make a feather stick. As 1,000 of you pointed out, my hands tremble like that. They've done it as long as I can remember. They got significantly worse when I got it at some point in the military. I was Army infantry for 5 years, and that's my cross to bear now. Graduation present. Anyway, it's my knife, BPS knife. A lot of you have asked what kind it is. It's I don't know what model it is. It's just a BPS knife, and I carry it primarily because these holes in there are a 22 caliber. I can put a bullet tip in there and pop it out, and I've got black powder, and I'm gonna do a video on that eventually. I'm sure YouTube will love that. Anyway, so let's clean this guy up here. Make sure we're not cutting into any rocks because they're bad for your edge. My knife has been through a lot today. Okay, so I brace that with my arm up here, and down here is where the fun is. Now, when you're making feather sticks, as many of you also have pointed out, I bleed. Yeah, it's a curse that I've had since I was born. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set this stick into the log like that. So I want to break this end off so that it sits flush against whatever it is I'm cutting into. Move some space here so we're not carving our hands off here, but that's going there, and this is how we make our curls. So let me scooch up in here like that, get my knife out, and yeah, then we make it from some curls, and I'll show you how we do the fatwood. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. We all know how to make feather sticks. If you don't, there's plenty of videos on it. I think I've got one on how to do it. So we got a couple feather sticks here. Terrible ones, right? Don't need to be fancy. They don't need to be anything cute. They just gotta work. I'm an avid believer in practical bushcraft, not Instagram bushcraft. If you're into that Instagram bushcraft stuff, I don't do that well. I'm as blunt as a hammer, and I tend to just say things the way I think they are and what seems to make sense in my head. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a piece of wood. Doesn't need to be very long, and I'm gonna shape it so it's flat on one side. Make one of these, and we're gonna put the stuff right there. Let's go. There, see these little lumps all over this tree? All these bumps here. These things are filled with sap. Eventually they break open, like this guy right there, and the sap starts to ooze out. I'm not sure what causes these. It only happens on the little trees. As they grow and the bark all cracks up along these fissures, like it's doing on here, and kind of make that out, but they all eventually start to crack open and bleed. And so what we're doing That one's already dry, so let's find one here that looks pretty good. About this fella? Yeah, you can give it a little push and you can feel it's a bit squishy. Now granted guys, you are gonna get sticky fingers, so if you don't like having sticky fingers, this might not be for you. Bushcraft in general might not be for you. Anyway, so you see that little guy right there? What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my knife and I'm just gonna puncture the bottom of that. Boop, just like that. The littlest, tiniest poke. Doesn't hurt the tree. These all break open and leak eventually anyway, and the whole tree cracks up as the bark starts to form. And then I'm gonna take my stick, place it underneath that guy, come from above, and just gently press on it. And it pops like a pimple. I'm gonna put that out onto my stick and scoop it right up like that. I'll let that run down the stick, and that is what we got. Let me show you here, get a good view of this. If I can get a view of that, that is just a bit of pine resin from inside one of them cracks, and I'm gonna catch a bit more. And like I said, I got it on the tip of my thumb here. Focus you. Okay, I got a bit of it on my thumb there, and granted it's sticky. One way to get rid of it is to grab some of the tree's own needles. They have juices in them, or wear a band-aid and rub it on the band-aid. But the juices inside the needle are oil, and it helps get rid of it. So this tree is covered in them. You see it just everywhere, all over this plant. You've got these little pockets of sap. There's a long one over here. Again, take my knife and give it a little poke. I'm gonna do right in the middle, right down there, and it's just the smallest little nick, just enough to get into the thing, and then again place my collective device right under there and press out the sap. And then scrape it up. And you get a little bit with each one, and we're gonna move along this and catch a few more of these. Don't need many, maybe half a dozen or so. We're back at home base. Here's our goo. I've just been tilting it like this now to get it to run down. Not very necessary, because what I can do now is I can take just a piece of one of these curls that I made, and I can just use that as like a spatula. And like what I typically will do, and we'll use this other one as an example, is I will select the way that this wants to lay. This feather stick wants to lay that way rather than that way, right? Just proximity to the ground's better. There we go. See, I can just drizzle it on there with this amount, but I'll just get that back in there, and pardon the shaking, but I'm gonna take this curl and I'm just gonna scrape that down right onto my my bundle of goop here, my curls, and kind of spread that around in there. Just smear that in there, and you can collect as much or as little as you want of this. If it's wet, collect more. If it's not, collect less. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold on to this, set that aside, because that's gonna be like a match, and then I'm just gonna wipe this down on the rest of these curls, get a bit of that on all of these, because this is very flammable stuff, and will help this burn. So now that you've painted your curls here, the obvious thing you're gonna do now is proper technique with your ferrule rod, right? So now what we're gonna do, now that we got the goop on there and I got my goop covered goopness, I don't know what words I'm using here, I am going to scrape some ferrule shavings down here. And if you want a tip on how to collect these iron based stuff, so scrape low and shallow here, down there at the bottom. It's hard to see because of how I'm doing this, but you want to scrape it very low on your rod so they don't fall down here. And it's hard for you to see because I'm awful at camera-ing. So let's move the camera. So you can see, scrape some of these shavings into a pile here. You can get it right near the bottom of your rod just so you don't lose that material down there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my stick here with my shavings right there, so that when those ignite, the goopy part of my feather sticks up here, and that's going to ignite the rest of the bundle here. And so because of the awkwardness of where I'm at here, we're going to go from above. Just like that. And now the shavings produce that black smoke that we're so used to seeing off of Fatwood. You can even hear it boiling off there. You see that good black smoke. And now that will burn a lot longer. You can see it boiling down there. That will burn a lot longer than just a feather stick alone. And that's why I do it that way. Then after it does that, it's just back to regular feather stick burning nonsense. But anyway, that's how we do it, boys. And thank you so much for joining me. And I will see you on the next adventure.